Hey guys, welcome back to another Saturday Live. Hey guys, today's video is sponsored by Soundsory Headphones. So Soundsory is a multi-sensory music therapy and movement program. The Soundsory Headphones, equipped with a dynamic filter and bone conduction technology, helps improve motor skills and cognitive development in children and adults. And this thing is made kind of for adults and children on the autism spectrum. This is designed as such. The program consists of specially designed music processed with neuroacoustic modifications, as well as a series of movement-based exercises. It is a 40-day program divided into 2 sections of 20 days each, with a break of 1 month in between. Each day consists of 30 minutes of music and exercise. Soundsory helps with a bunch of different skills, like gross, fine and visual motor skills, like drawing and balance and posture, hand-eye coordination and all that kind of stuff. Also, building on that, Soundsory actually improves emotional regulation and social skills and communication because it's an all-round program. Soundsory is designed to be safe and effective and is helping children and adults on the autism spectrum with auditory and sensory processing disorder and other developmental delays, which is absolutely fantastic. Children can complete colouring, Lego building and drawing, writing, painting and other activities whilst using Soundsory. And the battery life on this thing is about 9 hours. The online access to exercise videos, which will be linked on their website, add an option to switch to Bluetooth mode on the Soundsory headphones as a regular headset. So, you could use this thing just, you could put your iPad on and play Minecraft and just use this thing as a headphone. So it's really, really interesting. It's not just a therapy, it's actually a headphone as well. So Soundsory has recommended exercise that you can do while listening to the headphones, but you can adapt them to any activity like play therapy, games, with a parent or a therapist. Now, I highly recommend checking out Soundsory. I tried this myself. It's absolutely fantastic. It's really interesting. You have to try it to believe it. But if you are interested in checking them out, to celebrate World Autism Awareness Month, Soundsory is giving away a discount of 20% off their website. Now click on the link down below and use the code TheAspieWorld to get an extra 10% discount off your purchase. Now do that right now if you're interested in checking out this. I highly recommend it. I've used it. I would never recommend something that is rubbish. This is awesome. Please check it out. Okay, I know it's live, but it's live for me and the person who's the guest, but actually for you guys, you're seeing a pre-recorded kind of episode. But still, it's Saturday. You guys are awesome. Thank you so much for turning up and watching another episode. Now, before I forget, if you want to support me on Patreon, you can do it at patreon.com/TheAspieWorld. In other words, guys, go and subscribe to my YouTube channel, Facebook page, and Instagram TV content all the time on this platform. There's an airplane driving past. So anyway, today I am joined by a guest, a friend of mine called Molly. Now, Molly doesn't live too far away from me, actually. We live really close to each other. And it's really funny because we started hanging out on Instagram, kind of just talking about ADHD and stuff. And Molly had put some videos up. We're going to get into all of that very, very soon. So this is kind of a discussion about females and ADHD and female ADHD symptoms, not just females in general. I mean, females on the spectrum and neurodiverse. So we're going to get into it. Molly, how's it going?
Hi, how's it going?
Good.
So my name's Molly. Just like Dan, got ADHD and autism. I live on a sheep farm in North Wales, which is the rules when you live here. Not much else to say, really. Pretty boring.
It's funny, actually.
Stuff like that. So
your Instagram is full of sheep images.
It is full of sheep. I do love my sheep. So I just had a lamb the other day. We just had a little lamb born the other day. So it's always all go with sheep here. So
nice. Well, being a vegan, I appreciate it. So yeah. So Molly, do you want to tell us what your diagnoses are?
Yes. So I was diagnosed when I was about 25 with very severe hyperactive impulsive type ADHD, and then later on with autism. And like a lot of other girls, I had a misdiagnosis first of borderline personality disorder or emotionally unstable personality disorder, and then later on bipolar disorder, which got me put on all sorts of crazy medications and made me really poorly. And
wow,
it's a common story for a lot of people. So it's all finalized now. It's just ADHD and autism and all of the little things that come under that, accessories you get with it. So
Definitely. And it's funny you should say that, because I feel like a lot of females who are on the spectrum will get this kind of like personality disorder kind of diagnosis. And then they're like, oh, this isn't it. I'm still having these same issues and this is not it. And so, yeah, I mean, your story is one in a bazillion, I'm guessing. And this is one of the reasons why I want to do this stuff, because I like to show relatability to real life. I'm sure there's a bunch of girls watching this right now will be like, she's just like me. And I want to give them that opportunity. So Molly, ADHD. I mean, so me and Molly, we've become really cool friends. Actually, we started hanging out on I don't know, on Instagram, just chatting. And then we realized that we had loads in common. It was really fun. So we've been having a real laugh talking about how ADHD impacts our ability to do stuff. And one of the things actually we were just talking about is this thing. Now this is the loop ear plugs that block out sound. And
the gold one here.
Yeah, see, Molly has the gold ones and I have the black ones. Now, these are really interesting. Now, I would say that I initially got these for sensory processing disorder, right? So with autism, right, Molly, you can agree that you have sensory processing disorder, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it's auditory based as well. So noises are really kind of, yeah.
Absolutely, yeah.
But I think that we are also using it for something else, which is to create focus from noise distraction. Have you been doing this?
Yeah, absolutely agree. I mean, I think, like you said, initially it was just for the noise, to help sort of, because it lowers lowers the noises by like 20 decibels, doesn't it? So
it doesn't.
It kind of takes that harshness out of things. That's kind of why initially I got them. But I found, like, sitting at the computer doing anything, I just have so much more focus, because there's so many little noises and how it actually affects the brain. You don't even realize until you have that little thing to help. So yeah, really, really good for focus and for calming down the sort of harsh sensory reactions you get from noises. So yeah, really good.
I think this is a great example of how, because people always ask, you probably get this question as well, people always ask you, like, how does ADHD and autism kind of like interlock, and how do they kind of like beat each other up? And I think this is a great example of, like, you're trying to focus your best, right? You've got ADHD, so you're switching from task to task to task all the time. And then the sensory input from the sensory processing disorder, which is part of your autism diagnosis, is like kicking your butt and making you kind of like go even worse from thing to thing, because you're getting third party distraction. And I think this is a good example of, if I was to put a hack out, I would definitely say, from my recommendation, that these earplugs was a great idea. And it was actually you who had them first. You had the loop ones first, didn't you?
Yeah.
And you were kind of blown away by the loop ones. So I was like, I've got to try the loop ones. And so I worked with Loop, and we did a sponsored post on my Instagram. But I absolutely love them. Honestly, I was like, whoa, these guys are crazy good. So yeah, guys, I'll leave a link for Loop as well, so you can check them out if you want to know what me and Molly are talking about. But let's get into some ADHD stuff, right? So it's really funny. You've been on somewhat of like a journey since you got your diagnosis, right? And so how old were you when you had your diagnosis?
What, sorry?
How old were you when you had your diagnosis of ADHD?
I was 25 when I got that. So it was a couple of years ago.
So since that time, you've had some other like comorbid conditions come on, right? And what are those? Like, tell us a little bit about the diagnosis that trickled from that.
Yeah. Well, I mean, when I was first seen by this psychiatrist, he was kind of looking me up and down. He's like, "Do you want to go for an autism one as well?" And I was like, "No, this is enough for now." Which I should have done, really. And then once I took all of these other medications, I took like lisdexamfetamine, and I was already on venlafaxine, and I took all of these bipolar ones because it was just a nightmare. But basically what they did, which is, it's a good thing overall, really, it kind of made me look more autistic, if that makes sense.
Right,
because they stressed me out so much.
No masking was involved, right?
And look, yeah, and my mask just disappeared. Which really, it was a pretty stressful time. But it was a blessing in disguise, really, because then I had to be seen by the doctors, and, I was having like meltdowns and things like that. And then it came out, whereas otherwise, go back to what you said about females, I might have carried on masking it because I felt like I wanted to, and I wanted to fit in more. Whereas this sort of thing that forced it out, has made me get a diagnosis, get help, and things like that. So
wow.
So it's been good overall. It's been a bit of a wild journey, but
That's good.
It's common for a lot of people. Not exactly that, but it's a pattern, isn't it? That
It is. It is. How would you say, like, the importance of, like, so say as a young girl watching this right now, or a mother of a child who's potentially on the spectrum and a female, how important would you say it is to actually formally get that diagnosis rather than kind of like bumble about in the dark? Like, do you see a difference in, like, now you have a diagnosis and have kind of like an idea? Do you see a difference?
With sorry, was that with autism or with ADHD?
Well, with any one of the that's okay. With any of the neurological conditions, like, you know, if you're thinking about like ADHD and autism together combined, you know, because they're usually diagnosed together. You know, they were for me at least, and a bunch of people I do know. So, you know, versus having these diagnoses now to before you had them, do you feel that having a diagnosis has helped you in any way, shape, or form, even if it's just to be like a self-confidence thing?
Absolutely. I mean, I know that sometimes diagnosis can be like a privilege and a lot of people, they can't get it, but you know, I just think it's been a really amazing thing for me personally, just to understand yourself a lot more, because with things like this, it is kind of how you've been since you began your early development. It's quite fundamental to who you are, isn't it?
Mm-hmm.
And then once you learn that it is who you are, it's how you work, then you can work with it. You know what I mean? You can then develop strategies, change your life around it, accept yourself a bit more rather than just constantly fighting against yourself. Because that's what I was doing for so long, you know, and I just didn't understand a lot of what I was doing and how I was working. And I was just like, well, one day I'll be like this. And now I'm like, I won't be like that one day, and that's okay, you know. It just helps with a lot of that, accepting who you are. And I think for me, realizing that I have something that so many other people have, the way that I am is not just, you know, it's not strange, it's not weird, I'm not you know, different. It's you know, it's all stuff that fits in boxes with.
Yeah, I mean, and you can accept yourself, right? So that was a really big thing.
Huge, yeah. Absolutely.
You know, I think I've never related more to anything that anyone's ever said, but you were like, oh, I'll be like this one day, right? And I always thought that myself. You know, I always thought like, oh, in my mind, it was like, I'm going to grow up one day, you know, and I'm going to be so much different, because, and when I was a kid, life it's somewhat more intense when you're a child, right? It's really more intense when you're a child. And then when you get to your teenage years, it's a little less intense. And then when you get to your, you know, you're like in mid-20s, late 20s, early 30s, I mean, it just gets the same then as when you were a kid. I don't know what that phenomenon is. I think it's in your teenage years, you have more kind of, there's a different chemical change going on in your body. So I think there's maybe more support available. I
think sometimes you almost want to be a bit different when you're a teenager.
Yeah, it's
you know.
Yeah, quirks are empowering when you're a teenager, right?
And then when you're an adult and you start working and, you know, you start hanging out with adults, it's like, oh man, this sucks, you know. But
yeah, I think that is it. You know, when you're a child, there's pressure to be a child, to learn all these things. When you get to a teenager, you don't need to learn the basics of life. You're just cruising, but you have no responsibility. You got no kids, you got no house, you got no car. But then when you get to an adult, you got all those things, and then it's those responsibilities again. You got to act like a human, a domesticated human. And so, yeah, I totally relate to that. So here's a question about medicine or not medicine in general, but kind of like medication. How do you, because look, I get this question quite a bit, and I asked, when I was interviewing Paige, we did an interview, not the SEER video, we did another interview, and I asked Paige about medication, and she said she took medication. I'm sure she said she took medication, and I take medication, right? But a lot of people have this kind of issue where if they take meds for ADHD, for instance, people will like shame on them, like, oh, you know, you shouldn't be taking medication, all this kind of stuff, and you get these like, I don't even want to call it, these Karens, like telling you that like CBD is the only way, you know, forget medication.
Just have some like lavender essential oil, just ingest that. Yeah, don't ingest essential oils, just a public announcement.
There are some essential oils you can ingest, but mainly
not the MLM ones, but
but yeah. So in terms of medication, what would you say about it? What's your take on it? How do you feel about it? And there's no right or wrong answer here, because some people will be like, I don't like meds, and that's fine. And some people will be like, I need them. So what's your opinion? I just love to have a well-rounded view of this.
My opinion is, if you need them and you're monitored, that's my biggest thing, is if you're monitored correctly, then, you know, I think it's important to take them. The thing is, just for me personally, is I don't think I'll ever take medication again, just because having both, so having like such severe ADHD and the issues that I do have with the autism, it just doesn't work. There's always a bottleneck for me. But what I will say is that, yeah, it's a bottleneck. There's some downsides to me personally, but the things that it did treat, like say for ADHD, it was amazing, and some people, they don't have all of these downsides, and it helps a lot of people to function, and I think that that's great. I think that's really important. People have the right to be able to function, don't they? And I don't think that there should be any shaming in that at all. I think that's I think that comes from, I don't know if it's an uneducated place or what, but I think it's important to encourage people to get help if they need it, 100%.
Yeah, definitely. Do you know, I have this, because like for years I wouldn't take medication because I felt like, to me, it was like, it won't be true to who I am. And yes, I'm crazy and I'm all over the place and I fall over and I spill people's drinks. But like, to me, it was like, I felt like that was part of who I was, and I rejected the medication. But then in January of 2019, I'd hit such a low with my, with everything that was going on. I had this kid who was like, 1.5 years old. And I was like, wow, this is an intense moment in my life. And now I realize that all of the things that I could just run away and hide from in my room or in my office, now I'm dad and I have to be here for this kid no matter what. And so I need some help, right? I need some help to manage myself in this situation because I need to be here for this kid. And he took priority. So I went to my psych and I said something like, can you help me? And they gave me this great medication. They said, look, let's start off on the lowest dose. And I'm still on the low dose. Yeah. And it was duloxetine. Now, primarily, duloxetine was made as an antidepressant, right? But what it does do is it takes away a lot of kind of that kind of like weird stress anxiety that comes with ADHD, where you're so pumped all the time. You get this like stress anxiety because you're like, am I doing the right thing? I don't know. I'm still going, And it took all. It kind of tipped that away. Then I realized, I asked him why he prescribed that, and he said, well, they did tests with people who were diagnosed with Asperger's syndrome, and I know it's just autism spectrum disorder now, right? But what he means is like people with lower support needs, right? So people who are a bit more like their executive function and other kind of daily life function was a little bit kind of more self-manageable and independent than, say, somebody with like, a nonverbal kid who had some other intellectual disability as well as autism. So he said that they tested duloxetine and it worked really well to help improve some of the ability of a person on the spectrum with that that type of diagnosis. So I said, okay. So I tried it, and it's been a life changer. I think it's like, wow, it really did change my life. And so I changed my whole view on it. So I've been on both sides. I've been the guy that's been like, I'm not going to take medication. You can't change me. To being this guy, it's like, wow, now I took it. I'm like, whoa, it's cool. So I just wanted to know, for that reason, what your relationship was like with it. And I totally respect that. If you've had a terrible time with it.
That's the thing, isn't it? That a lot of people, they have this sort of, and it can be sometimes, but they have this sort of view that, oh, it's just a crutch, it's just whatever. But, there are times when, you do need a boost of serotonin, or norepinephrine, or for ADHD, with dopamine, because it's your brain, isn't it? It's, sometimes it's kind of low in these chemicals, and that, that can cause depression. Yeah. Or, with us, for me, I'm like chronically understimulated, so I constantly need dopamine, and the medication does that. So, it can help people function, and some people that, they don't have to be on it forever either. It's just,
it could be a short fix or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah.
Do you know, it's funny you should say that. Like, somebody asked me yesterday, they said, what do you do to relax? And, my Alexa is talking to me. So they said, what do you do to relax? And I was like, I don't. I have to learn stuff. So I have to learn things constantly. I always have to learn. I have to like, when I go running, like, people say to me like, oh, what music do you listen to when you run? I said, I don't. I listen to audiobooks and podcasts. So I have to, but they're educational podcasts. So I have to learn things constantly. Like, I did my chemistry degree because I was bored. I wasn't learning anything. I wasn't stimulated enough. I needed and so, but I kind of met my match though, because when I got close to burning out, because my father was sick and I was looking after him every day. And then I was doing my dissertation for my degree. I had to do 8 exams as well. And I was writing my book that I needed a finished book. So I was writing 2 books at once. And so I kind of like, whoa, shoot, and I was still having to send lectures, still doing exams, still revising. And I did it. I pulled it off. Obviously, I did have my degree, and I have a best-selling, book published in 3 languages in the US and UK. And so all those things, I could manage them and I think it's down to the ADHD brain. You can like kind of, I do this part and I'll do that part and I'll go back to this one and then I'm back over here and then I'm back over there. But you still know what the things you're doing are, because you're like, yeah, it's like spinning plates, isn't it?
And it's funny because people, like neurotypical people who haven't really been around it, they would think that ADHD would be the opposite, wouldn't they?
Yeah, it's like a scatty and organized.
Staring on top of the wall, but actually you're able to do so much stuff and multitask,
Yeah. Because it's so funny. Like my girlfriend said to me one day, she was like, "What are you doing?" I've got this book called Chinesey, so it's teaching me Mandarin Chinese, and so she came downstairs and she was like, "What are you doing?" I was like, "Oh, my computer's rebooting, so I've started to learn Chinese, and I'm gonna get back to it." And she was like, "Of course you are." Like, like, why wouldn't you be? Like, it's ridiculous. So like when I'm working out, I was like, I had this thought. I was like, I want to work out because otherwise I'm just going to become this like unhealthy blob. And then, especially the amount of food that I can consume because my brain's going like, so I have to constantly be eating. And then, I was like, I'm going to take up running. About 11 years ago, I took up running and I love running apart from currently because of this bloody issue. Anyway, I decided that I was like, all I need to do when I'm running is read books. So I was reading stuff on my phone while running, and that wasn't good, bumping into people and falling over and stuff. True story, dude. And then I was like,
did you really?
I really did. I honestly, so up until about a year ago or 2 years ago, I would go running and I'd work on my phone while I'm running. So I'm like entering emails, I'm like planning videos out and running because that's how my brain was going, right? I was even making content while I'm running. There's actually some video, you can still find some videos of me running and doing videos, talking to cameras. But then I realized like,
I would definitely get hit by a car if I did that.
I ran into a cyclist. A cyclist was riding towards me. I ran into him straight away. Oh, mate, but audiobooks was the way forward me. So I feel like, here's a question then. Can you relax or do you relax? Or is your relaxing time what some people would think as being kind of like not relaxing?
I get asked this question all the time, especially by doctors, and I never know what to say. So basically, my brain is either completely off, like I'm just, it's just off. I'm not relaxing. I'm stressed out while I'm just staring at a wall, like I can't do anything.
Yeah.
So it's that sort of thing. Or like you, I'm doing way too much. So when I went for my autism assessment, she said the lady said to me, "What do you do to relax?" And I was just kind of like, and then she looked to my husband and he went, "She reads the DSM-5." And she was like, maybe you could like not do that, and do something else. And I was like, I can't. It's hard for people to understand because that's with ADHD, you need a different approach, like meditation and things like that. It doesn't work. If I try to have like a bath or something, I'm like, I'm so bored. I'm gonna pull my own head off. Like it's. I have to be, like you said, you have to be learning. You have to be, I like to research and skim studies and stuff like that and pick up new information. So that's kind of what I do. I'd like to learn how to do it, but I don't really know how to actually. But the loops that I found that they're helping me, stay outside a bit longer, and they're helping me do things a bit longer because I'm not bombarded with all of the little sounds. If that makes sense.
Yeah.
That's good.
Dude, and I love it. Like I totally relate, and I think to me, if someone asks me like, why do I never take that break that you were saying now? And sometimes I go, well, it'd be cool to just sit down. And there's two things that happen. One is that when I sit down and do nothing, I'm like, wow, I could be doing so many things right now. And I'm thinking like, I could just be doing this. I could get this done, this done, this done, this done. And then the other thing is that I sit down and try and relax, and I'm like oozing like ideas and stuff. And I'm like, oh, I got to build this thing, and I need to get, so before, I mean, oh my God, my parents, bless them, like their house was full of random stuff, and I lived there. Like I seriously like solar panels, and I wanted to know how solar panels worked and stuff. And I just bought all this kind of crazy stuff. And it's funny because, like, to me, that's relaxing. And my doctors are the same. They're like, you need to find time to relax, because if you don't relax, you're going to kind of burn out. And I guess like that is the balance between it. It's like you have so much input creativity, but then you also will have that burnout every now and then. And one can't exist without the other, like the yin and yang. You good and evil always exist together, right? So I think that is the balance, I guess. But I guess neurotypical people watch Saturday Night Takeaway and like, chill.
I don't think I've ever watched like normal TV. I can't do it. I need like constant, like
we don't
stimulation. Like I'll watch like something. I watch stupid cartoons. You know what I mean? Because like it's just constant
flashy. Yeah.
Flashing lights and dumb jokes that are really stupid, but they just keep my little brain
Attentive.
engaged.
I bet, and this is a thing, like I tried out this technique, right? And anyone listening, and you should definitely try this. My favorite film in the world is Fight Club. Yeah, I know, I always talk about it. And anybody who's watching now knows me. They'll be like,
Watched
oh,
it
Dan.
last weekend.
Dude,
Again.
yes, mate. I watched it last weekend as well. How cool is that? My favorite film in the world. And I even spent 30 quid on this mystery box just so I could get this Fight Club patch. Anyway, one of the things is I watched a YouTube creator, and he said that he puts his favorite movie on in the background because it helps him focus. And I do believe he's on the spectrum. I've done a video about this. And so I was like, I'm going to try this, man. So I put Fight Club on repeat on a monitor in my office and had it on all day. And what happened was my brain that would wander off and start kind of like, I was trying to focus on work, and my brain would like wander off and start doing stuff like, oh my God, this plant's a bit dusty. I could get a cloth. Oh my God, that cap is weird. And now the dog needs playing with it. So rather than focus on, like, go off focus and look at things like that, I would kind of look at my focus on a movie that would keep me engaged enough to have cognitive focus. Then I'd be like, okay, because it's quite intellectual. Obviously, it's quite an intense film. And I'd go back to the task at hand. Really interesting experience. And then they took it off Netflix, and I almost threw my iPad out the window.
What did I watch on? I think it was on Amazon Prime. I watched it the other day.
Yeah, but it is on there now. But I bought it in the end. I bought it. So
it's funny because, like, you're saying about just relax as well, and people might watch a film, but even that, I feel like we can't do that normally, because then straight away I'm like, I'm 100% certain that he has dissociative identity disorder, and I'm going to prove it. I'm going to get the DSM-5 out. My husband's like, can you just watch a film and just move on? And it's like my dad's favorite film, and I'm like, I call it like Fight Club disorder now if I ever talk about that, and it's just just constantly having to be thinking and analysing, and I think sorry, Karen.
No, you go. I don't want to interrupt you. It's your time to talk.
No. It just made me think what you just said like a few minutes ago, that it's that balance, and you said about balance, that's what that sort of fight is in between the two, is in between understimulation and overstimulation. You're trying to not be understimulated, because with the ADHD, that'll make you feel depressed, and then autism makes you feel overstimulated all the time. So it's trying to like be perfectly in the middle all the time. It's really hard.
Yeah, it's very much a juggling experience, is not a juggling act. It's funny, specifically Fight Club. I think one of the reasons why I love it so much is that there's so many levels to it that and like, autism is this like thing where you pull things apart and look at how they're created and look at the puzzle to try and create answers, right? And Fight Club has so many open ends, and Chuck Palahniuk, or whatever his name is the guy who wrote it, was just like such an interesting bloke, and he created this kind of like pseudo, I don't want to call it like socialist idea of what kind of like socialist capitalism fight would look like in like the modern age of the 90s. And that is so interesting, that it's so complex. It like really kind of gets my brain going. And I think it's the same with you, the DSM, right? The DSM is so complex, it's so vast, and there's so many things in there. You're like, oh yeah, I think I get, and you can go in and you look in it and you'll find something new every time, because there's always, it's like looking in dictionaries or thesauruses, right? You're able to find a new definition for something because it's endless amounts. I mean, obviously there's a finite number of things in there, but what I'm trying to say is that you're not going to sit down and go through every single one of them page by page. You know what I mean?
It's interesting then, because what you can do as well, like when things are your special interests, you start to like see it in real life, don't you? So there may be like themes sort of in Fight Club that, you're looking at around you and you're picking that up. And then with the DSM-5, which is like one of my main special interests, I start to like look at other people and notice patterns, and then I'm like, I think, and then I've been right because I've been like so like I've analyzed this thing so much, and then I'm like, looking at people's stuff.
I was gonna say it's because you've read every page, so you're just like, yep, I know what's going on here. That's too funny, dude.
Told me the day though, in an autism group, they said they actually don't use the DSM-5 over here, and I was like, because my psychiatrist did, and no one's ever corrected me before, but apparently it's not like the main thing used.
It's not. It's more because it's an American psych book, right? The American Medical Association, it's kind of like 90% of the American kind of medical association do use it for their diagnostic criteria. In the UK, I would say it's about 60%, or even less than that. They didn't use the DSM-5 on me, which I had, but I did get diagnosed in 2013 before the change of the DSM came into fruition anyway. So I was still on the old criteria, which is why I have the diagnosis of Asperger's syndrome. Is there anything you'd like to add? Anything that you think is important for people to know about ADHD and females and from your perspective?
I think it's important to know. I think it's important to, if you suspect that you have it, because don't you? Do you know what I mean? If you
Yeah.
suspect some of it, I really would consider talking to a professional, because, I and many other people have the lived experience of trying to, manage it on your own. And it's really, really difficult, and the thing is as well, we were saying before about diagnoses and things like that, is that, it could be something else,
Yeah.
it could
Yeah.
be
Yeah.
whatever you're seeing could be something else. It might just be how you are, or it could be anxiety. And there's a lot of things that mirror each other, isn't it? Like trauma, for example, and
Yeah.
ADHD are very, very similar. That's why, so there might be certain things you need to uncover. And I just think it's important to just, take yourself seriously and get help if you need it, and things like that. So, and learn strategies. That's the biggest thing I've
Oh
learned.
gosh. Yeah.
It's
Definitely.
strategies. I went into that kicking and screaming when a therapist told me that. It's like, you need to stop trying to eliminate all of these things you have and stamping out your hyperactivity, because it's always going to be there. You just have to develop things to cope with it a little bit better, especially for executive dysfunction. That's just a strategy thing, unfortunately. So yeah, I think.
Excellent. Molly, how can people get in touch with you if they want to get you on your socials? What are your social media handles?
You can find me on, it's very new, but it's called Hyperfocus, because that's my biggest problem. But it's very new, but I'll send you the stuff for that. But
sure,
yeah.
I'll put it in the show notes of the I'll put it in the show notes of the podcast, and I'll also put it in the description of the videos here, so you guys can check out Molly on Instagram. And I think you have a YouTube channel as well, do you? Or is it not? Is it just an Instagram?
Yeah, I've got one whole video on this.
Hey, it starts with one video. If you had no videos, then it'd be worrying. So, Molly, thank you so much for coming on today, and I hope everybody has enjoyed this discussion. All right.
Cool. Bye.